All right, Mike, I feel like we're doing a Halloween episode. We're talking about some spooky shit today.
The spookiest of spooky shit. It's all devils and demons and things of that nature. You ever notice how it always seems to be people that are faithful that they get attacked by demons and devils? Like, you never hear about somebody who's like out there fucking sacrificing animals in the name of Satan getting attacked by demons. Or, you know, just a normal person, say just an atheist. You don't hear about atheists being possessed by demons. Why is it people that are faithful to God are the ones that get attacked by demons?
I'd say there's not a lot. There are some. There's a couple good old Unsolved Mysteries episodes where there's people who've said, you know, I didn't believe in this shit and I wasn't religious. It kind of just showed up. Although those are rare. And I'd say about 98% of the time, it's people who practice whatever religious faith they practice regularly.
But even in those cases where they say they're an atheist, those are usually like haunting sort of cases. I'm talking like actual possession.
Ooh.
Like where they come out the other side being like, holy fuck, that was the devil, or that was demons that were possessing me. You know what I think it might be though? And this is what gets blamed for it more than anything is I think it's schizophrenia combined with extreme faith. Like, if you've got a really strong faith and you believe everything that your religion is teaching, and then you combine that with schizophrenia, which usually has things like hearing voices or seeing creatures that aren't there, or even other people that aren't there. But if you have this extreme belief in, or I shouldn't even say extreme, just like a strong belief in your faith, that if you're hearing things talking to you and you see these crazy creatures, you're going to be like, man, that seems demonic to me. That seems like that's going to be something that's either the devil or one of his demons, and it's talking to me. So, you know, then they start talking about these demons, and then they're in the middle of a schizophrenic fit, and people are feeding into that, the priest or the exorcist or whoever it is, maybe even just their parents who are also ultra religious. They're feeding into this hysteria because you're claiming that demons are talking to you, and in their belief system, that's a very real possibility. Demons are trying to tempt humanity to turn away from God. So when one of these things comes in and the person who is actually schizophrenic starts seeing and hearing, or seeing creatures and hearing voices, it's real to them, and then other people are acting as though it's real. Like, where usually someone who's schizophrenic, you'd try to get them out of the episode and try to ground them in reality. But in this case, they're feeding into it, so it's making it more and more. So then, because they know how a demon would be repulsed by anything holy, they start acting this way because it's real, you know, and they already have this thing going on with their brain that's making them see and hear things that very likely aren't really there.
Yeah, I mean, even if we're talking about somebody who's not schizophrenic, I mean, I think a big enough, you know, velvet painting of Jesus at grandma's house is enough to kind of set your mind's opinion on that thing. I mean, would you agree that if you grow up not to be a religious person, but you have, like, say something that simple, your grandmother she has a picture of Jesus, or just a particular fancy cross that she hangs in her room. If you grow up not to really study that or partake in any type of religious practices, that imagery alone is going to kind of fill the blanks of what your perception is of that religion, at least visually, right?
Yeah, I think you'd at least have knowledge of it. But I just like it seems like I wonder if people didn't have knowledge of religion, because even even having knowledge of it, it makes it so it's you've got like a reference point, so you're not, if you see these things you'd be like, oh, that looks like what I would think a demon would look like.
Most definitely, yeah. I think that's my point exactly. Even just one painting or one cross, and just hear, just in passing, just from living, hearing about God and Jesus and heaven and hell and Satan and demons, when they come across something unexplainable, just that one thing, and their mind filling the blanks built from that one image can kind of drive them to that conclusion.
Yeah, I think that's a very real possibility. And I think we covered in pretty great detail the Annalise Michel exorcism.
We did.
And that's another case where it was someone who was really faithful. She was a devout Catholic. She would always say her prayers, who started displaying the classic signs of a demonic possession. And you can still to this day hear her exorcism. It's on YouTube. There's an audio recording of it, and it's scary as shit. Oh. Like it does not sound like it sounds like it was from a horror movie. It doesn't sound like it's actually real, but it's real, and it's so fucking scary. She ended up dying throughout the exorcism, or at the conclusion of the exorcism.
Yeah, that audio. I mean, you have to kind of remind yourself that. I mean, it's like, I think it was like even like a reel-to-reel recorder, right?
I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was, because it was in the 60s or 70s.
Yes, that kind of even lends a little bit more weight to the fact that it wasn't tampered with. I mean, you can hear the quality, but it's just, you have to remind yourself that it's real, because it's literally the sound of what they put in horror movies now, adding a second tone, dropping the pitch. It's easy to replicate. It's the classic demon voice when you mess with editing. It's easy to do, but it's just, it's weird when you realize they got it from fucking that.
Yeah, it is. It's so weird. And it's seriously, if you guys have not heard that yet, I highly recommend checking it out, and you'll have nightmares, because it's fucking terrifying.
Yeah, I think when we covered that, I actually put up samples of different Tibetan throat singing and tritonal singing, and it's still not what is on that fucking audio tape.
And she would speak languages she didn't know how to speak.
Yeah,
and that's the craziest thing.
Yeah,
but that's kind of a interesting thing too, because there've been cases of people with multiple personality disorder that where the other personalities will know things that the person themselves never learned. Like, where does that come from? It's so weird.
Yeah.
So it kind of, I don't know, man. It makes me wonder if there's more to it. The Annalise Michel one is kind of similar to. Have you ever heard of the Tanaku exorcism?
I don't think I have.
This was actually fairly recent. I think it was 2005 when it happened. It's in Romania.
Oh, then nope, that's not the one I was thinking of.
Okay. So there was this nun in Romania. She was 23 years old. Her name was Maricica Irina Cornici, and she moved to the Tanaku Monastery. She was born. Her family was messed up, really, from the get-go. Her parents were split up, and then her father committed suicide. So her and her brother ended up going to an orphanage, and they stayed there from the time they were children until just before she moved to the monastery. But she did end up getting a job in Germany as a nanny for her family. And then she ended up meeting up with a friend that she grew up with in the orphanage, who had become a nun at the Tanaku Monastery, and she convinced her to join the monastery and do the whole nun thing. Ooh. So she joins the monastery, becomes a nun, and it seems like really soon after she took the vows and officially became a nun, she would start giggling during Mass.
Oh.
Which that's something that is reported a lot with cases of alleged demonic possession.
Yeah.
Like just laughter during Mass. I think it might have been part of the witch trials too. The Salem witch trials. I think that might have something to do with it, but that's neither here nor there. But she started to display deterioration in her mental state. So they brought her to the doctor. They did a full diagnostic on her, and they said that she was schizophrenic. I mean, keep in mind, this isn't way back in the early 1900s or anything like that. This was 2005. So they were well aware of schizophrenia. They declared that she had schizophrenia. They did a 2-week treatment with her, and they released her after that. She went back to her monastery, and she was lucid. She wasn't having delusions or acting weird anymore. But her friends and people who knew her said up to this point in her life, she had never shown any signs of mental illness. But schizophrenia usually occurs in the early 20s. So she's 23. So it could have been the sudden change in lifestyle that maybe set it off. Who's to say? But she went back to the monastery, and she soon after started displaying more signs that she was possessed by a demon. So the priest that was running this monastery, he was this guy named Daniel forgive me, I don't really understand how to speak Romanian, but I believe his name was Daniel Coraginu. But he was a younger priest. He was in his late 20s, and my cat is trying to get on the show again. Listen to that fucker.
Sir, are you possessed yourself, or do you know anybody who's been possessed?
But he helped build the monastery. He was ordained as a priest by his local bishop when he was younger, and he ended up having some disputes with the diocese of the church, and he would argue with the bishop over certain rules that the church had in place, saying that they were put in place by Freemasons and this was bullshit. They like basically saying that the way the Romanian, I think it was the Romanian Orthodox Church, the way that they were running things was incorrect, and he wanted to do it his way. But he organized a community of nuns. This monastery that he had helped found was for monks, but the monks ended up leaving and becoming priests. So this Coraginu priest stayed on and started up a community of nuns. And it was almost like a little cult, according to people that knew what was going on. They said that the nuns were completely devoted to him. So it's almost like he was like a cult leader of like this weird religious cult, a weird Christian cult. But it was still a monastery for the Romanian Orthodox Church. But he didn't believe that she was mentally ill. He had the opinion that she was possessed by Satan herself.
Ooh.
Yep. Satan himself or herself literally came out of hell and possessed this poor young nun. And her brother, who she grew up with in the orphanage, he even testified that he himself witnessed Satan going into her and knew that she was suffering from a demonic possession.
Holy shit, with his like special Satan seeing glasses?
No, just as regular people eyes.
Wow.
Yeah, that's...
How does Satan enter one's body, Mike?
Well, I mean, it really depends on how he feels and the way that he can trick you. I've heard that sometimes he will go into your nose, like he'll just kind of go in like smoke. Sometimes he will go through your mouth as smoke, or other ways. Sometimes if you drop the soap in the shower, he'll creep up behind you and you'll get a little Satan in you.
Yeah, protecting your beehole from Satan is a real reason why they teach you to pick up stuff by bending,
crouching with your knees.
Bending down at
your
the
knees, not your back.
Yeah. It's nothing sexual at all. It's just to be anti-possessed. It's to protect.
Yeah, it's anti-Satan possession. When Satan comes and knocking on your beehole, you don't want to be his little puppet, trust me.
Yeah, he's literally got people watching every human on earth that's in a shower. And if they drop their soap...
They drop that soap and there he is.
Yep.
You see some hooved... You pick up the soap and all of a sudden you see these cloven hooves behind you. You feel a little bit of pressure and then there you go. You're possessed by Satan. That's what he do.
And I also have to say, if you're still using bar soap in a shower, you're an animal. It's 2020. You should get some.
Use a loofah, you son of a bitch. But anyway, getting back to this poor nun who did not drop the soap in the shower. You could drop your loofah in the shower and still get some Satan in you. I mean, you still got to bend over to pick that thing up. Just don't drop things in the shower. And if you do, for God's sake, bend with your knees, not your back.
I guess if you go to like the old writings, it's just don't bend over too much while naked. So whatever situation you might be in with that, just
or if you've got like a weird flap where your ass area would be, don't bend over with the flap open.
Just wow.
Anyway,
please get back to
Father Corrigino. Yes, Father Corrigino. He claimed that you can't take the devil out of people with pills. Now, to me, that sounds like something like one of those Southern Baptist ministers would say. So it's really funny thinking that it was some guy in Romania. But I guess, this sort of person is the same throughout the world. I would assume. I don't know. But I just picture that in a Southern accent. For some reason.
I would assume that Satan loves pills, so I might be in agreement with this man.
There's no anti-devil pill yet. But don't worry, Pfizer's working on it. But Father Corrigino decided that they needed to do an exorcism post-haste. So he did all the fancy stuff that you usually do in an exorcism, but because she was possessed by the devil, you throw holy water on someone or sing the magic songs, they start going crazy. So in order to make sure she didn't go crazy, they decided to restrain her by binding her hands and feet and locking her in a room. So she was just bound hand and foot, so she couldn't do any damage, and they just locked her in a room and left her there after the exorcism.
Oh wow!
And then they went and they participated in a liturgy commemorating the ascension of Jesus, and I'm assuming that they devoted this liturgy to this poor young woman who is now bound and thrown in a room and locked in there. A few days after that session, they came in, they chained her to a fucking cross with her arms stretched across it like she was being crucified. They carried her chained to this cross into church and started anointing her. One of the nuns, Sister Nicoletta, said that Cornici was restrained in a way that they were taught to restrain people who are demonically possessed. So like they had this whole process in place. She's possessed. There's only one way to bind someone who is demonically possessed. We have to use chains. We have to use the cross. And then they They bound her to the cross
Wow.
and did the rites of exorcism.
That's weird because I have never heard of anybody using that in exorcism, and for them to say that's standard operating procedure.
Yeah.
Huh.
One of the nuns that were present said that had she not been bound, she would have either killed herself or killed someone else. And they even claimed that she knew that she was possessed and begged them to tie her up so that she wouldn't hurt anybody or hurt herself.
Okay.
So, I mean, maybe she had some moments of lucidity, or maybe they're just using this as an excuse, maybe.
Yeah.
But once they had her all tied up, they anointed her with holy oil, and they left her in the church for 3 days. They put a towel in her mouth so that she couldn't curse God, and they prayed around her, trying to get the devil to leave her body. And to try to keep her hydrated, they applied holy water to her lips. So that was the only drink that she got, was holy water on her lips.
Go ahead. I'll comment when you're done.
Okay. So after the 3 days, they moved her out, put her in her room, untied her, and Father Corrigino claimed that she was cured. So he's like, we have exorcised the demons, and declared her now demon-free or Satan-free, as the case may be. But so she was cured. They brought in bread and tea because she hasn't eaten or had anything to drink for 3 days. So she eats the bread, drinks the tea, and then she faints. And the nuns tried to rouse her. They were slapping her around, throwing water in her face. They took her pulse, and her pulse was weak. So they called in an ambulance. And the ambulance showed up. She was non-responsive. So they ended up administering 6 doses of adrenaline to try to wake her up. And they still couldn't rouse her. By the time she got to the hospital, she was declared dead on arrival.
Wow.
So this ended up being a whole thing. Father Corgino and the 4 nuns who helped him ended up being tried for murder, and also the charge of depriving a person of liberty. They were pushing for a life sentence, but Father Corgino was sentenced to 14 years in prison. And the nuns, I don't know how they decided on who got what, but they were their sentences were between 5 and 8 years. And there was a lot of support for them to let them out. Like they felt, the public a lot, and especially the religious faithful, felt that they were doing their duty to try to save this girl from being possessed by the devil. They ended up, obviously they did an autopsy on her, and the original autopsy in 2005 said that she had died of dehydration, exhaustion, and a lack of oxygen. And when they were doing the autopsy, they were able to see that there were marks that were left from being chained. She had marks on her arms and legs, showing signs that she had been bound and was trying to struggle against her bounds. But everyone ended up being sentenced and charged. But through appeals, Father Corrigino ended up only serving 7 years. And then I don't know what happened with the nuns. But the Roman Orthodox Church ended up closing the monastery and defrocking Father Corrigino. So he's now just Dan Corrigino.
Wow.
Hi, I'm Dan. Used to be a priest. But in 2014, the body was exhumed and they looked through everything again, and it was determined that the cause of death was an overdose of adrenaline. So these people all went to jail for something that the EMT did.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And that was conclusive. That's what killed her?
Yeah.
Wow. That's sad.
Yep.
I have to say, the being chained to a giant cross wasn't the only abnormal thing about this exorcism. I got to be honest, this sounded more like torture.
But a lot of these cases do, though.
I don't know. Maybe it's just images of modern exorcisms in my head of, dudes in nice suits, talking softly while they pray and making hand movements. I don't know. That sounded like a fucking torture session to me. I think that they had no idea what they were doing. Anytime we talk about cases to where these people starve to death, that's a common cause of death when it comes to these exorcisms, right?
Yeah, because I think the idea is to keep the body weak, which seems weird. Like, I feel like you'd want the body to gain strength to help fight the demon off, like you would an infection.
Right. I've read cases to where that they tried to feed the person who is going through the exorcism. They wouldn't eat. I think it was in the Annalise case. Didn't they give her IVs? They tried to, and she would just rip them out.
Yeah, I believe they did.
Yeah. So it's
they made an attempt to give her nourishment.
Yeah. So it seems to be just something that the person going through their exorcism does themselves instead of not giving them food. This sounded like a horrible ordeal for this poor thing. And I think that this was a religious ceremony of the bad type.
You think that he was trying to possess her?
I think he was trying to strengthen whatever was there. Or you just
think like the whole point was the torture?
That's super sad. Sounds like she went through hell, literally, demon possessed or not.
And the craziest thing is, and that's what I was saying about people that believe in demonic possession feeding into it and making that a reality for the person who's suffering through it. When she went to the hospital, she went for 2 weeks and she was declared okay and released and let go. And again, this was 2005. This isn't the archaic ages of mental health. This is 2005.
Yeah.
So, she was declared fine and allowed to leave. And then she goes back to the monastery and instantly it's like, hey, I'm fucking possessed by demons again.
Gosh, it does seem like she was under some type of an attack when she went there.
Or either that, or she was just easily convincible because she was schizophrenic, that the visions and things that she was seeing and hearing were actually real.
Yeah.
So she gets back and the priest is like, they're telling you you're fine, but pills can't get the demons out of you. Only I can get the demons out of you. And she's like, fuck, you're right.
Yeah.
The demon's still there. It's just hiding. And then they start the whole thing again. And she starts going into fucking demon mode. They gotta tie her down so she doesn't kill everybody. And she's just freaking out because this is reality to her. These demons are real. The things she's seeing and hearing are real. And these people are telling her they're real. So why wouldn't she believe it when she's got a priest who, if you're, again, by all rights, the nuns at this monastery were very devoted to this priest. So you've got that much faith in the priest that if he's telling you something, that it's going to be true. And you're schizophrenic. So you're already seeing and hearing these things, and he's confirming that what you're seeing and hearing is real and that it's the devil and only he can get you out. So of course you're possessed by the devil. Who are you going to go to? You're not going to go to the bank. You're going to go to a fucking priest.
Yeah. When she was in the hospital before, I mean, they must have been treating her with drugs, right?
Yeah. I would have to assume probably antipsychotics.
Yeah. And that's sad in itself because that could have been a tool, maybe not in his intentional manipulation, but mental drugs like that, drugs that are meant to treat mental ailments, even stuff as simple as depression, they don't work in a couple weeks sometimes. Sometimes they take a few months. You hear about people having bad experiences with a lot of these new antidepressant drugs to where it causes them to flip out. And that's usually like a misdiagnosis of how much to give the person, and they take too much or they take too little. And it's not that it's those types of things won't affect you. Like if you take too much, it's going to zombie you out. And if you take too little, it doesn't have an effect. Those things are fucking with the chemical balance of your brain. So it just instantly starts changing it. So, all he had to do is say is those pills didn't really work, did they? And then she's going to be like, no, it didn't. Or it didn't make her feel much better. So, yeah, exactly. That itself could have been a factor.
Or it could have just been she gets there and the priest is like, pills can't get the devil out of you, only I can. And then she turns over the pills and just stops taking medicine and then right back into it because he's making it a reality.
Yeah, even getting off those that quickly could send her mind into another chemical shift.
Yeah, that shit'll fuck you up.
Yeah.
Like, it takes a while to get everything balanced when you're on them, and then you're supposed to follow, like, a really strict, well, I shouldn't say strict, but you're supposed to follow a declining dosage to get off it so you don't just, so your mind doesn't go crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you said, it's fucking with the chemicals in your brain, and it's not something you want to take lightly.
Even if she wasn't suffering from schizophrenia and they thought she was and they were giving her that shit, they are now altering the chemical state of her brain. So she could have been
right.
Just now, if she wasn't seeing shit before, she very well could have possibly then after they gave her psychotic medication.
Yeah, who knows, man? It's a sad case all around, whether it's a real case of demonic possession or just ignoring schizophrenic diagnosis. It's fucking sad. You know, she was only 23 years old.
Yeah.
There's another case that might also be schizophrenia, but it's kind of interesting. Did you ever hear about the nun who got a letter or wrote a letter from the devil?
Wrote a letter from the devil?
Yes.
Like transcribed, spoke through?
Yeah.
Ooh,
like
no.
the devil tried to get her to follow him. And he wrote this letter. It was a letter that she wrote, but it was like the devil writing through her.
Auto writing from the devil.
Yeah. This one I just heard about recently, but I think the letter was just deciphered allegedly, I think in 2017. This letter had been hanging around since August 11th, 1676.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So there's a nun by the name of Sister Maria who was, she was 31 years old, and she lived at the convent of Palma di Montechiaro in Sicily. And she'd been there since she was 15 years old, according to the historical records that they were able to find. But apparently, this Sister Maria had been tormented by demons every night. So she would go to bed and they would torment her and keep her up all night. And so she was always like fighting against these demons. But on the night of August 11th, they found her face down on the floor of her cell. Her face was covered in ink, and she was holding a note that was written in this weird mix of symbols and letters, but no one was able to figure out what it said. And Sister Maria, when they found her, said that this letter was written by the devil, and the devil was trying to get her to turn away from God and become evil. And this letter is how the devil was trying to do that. And what the devil was trying to make her do was accept the things in this letter as being true. And then he wanted her to sign it. So she signed it, and it basically says, "Oh me." Like if you translated it says, "Oh me." So she didn't want to sign her actual name to it, so she wasn't really buying into what he was selling. I think she said that it was under forceful pressure from him.
Mm-hmm.
But there has been a lot of research done on this, and there was one group that was analyzing it that was able to determine that the nun's letter contained a mix of words from the ancient Greek alphabet, Latin, runic symbols, and Arabic. And she mixed them all together, and they said it appears like it was written in some form of shorthand, using different ancient alphabets that she may have studied while she was a nun. So they analyzed how the symbols and the characters, how they looked on the paper, and they were trying to isolate I shouldn't say isolate, but they were looking at the symbols that repeated to try to get an idea of where vowels might be. And they were able, based on this, they were able to kind of put together a pretty good idea of what it said. Now, when they were going through and analyzing it, they weren't expecting to get a great result out of it. They didn't think that they maybe get a couple of words, call it a day. But apparently she was really knowledgeable in what she was writing and was able to accurately portray the thoughts she was trying to put down using this jumble of ancient writing or ancient languages and symbols.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Yeah. But they were able to get a pretty good idea of what it said. There's parts that they weren't able to understand, and maybe it was because they weren't able to translate it correctly, but part of the letter said that the Holy Trinity, so that being God the Father, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, were dead weights, and that God thinks that he can free mortals, but the system works for no one. Perhaps now Styx is certain. That's what they were able to decipher.
Yikes.
So for people that don't know, the river Styx in Greek and Roman mythology is the river that separates the world we live in, the world of the living, with the underworld. And that's where the souls go. They go down River Styx, and that's why they used to bury people with a coin over each eye, so that they could take the coin and give it to Charon, the boatman, and he would take them down the River Styx.
Correct you, Asa.
Yeah. But they apparently she was she didn't have to undergo an exorcism, but they were able to bless her, and she was apparently went on to live a normal nun life. But this letter wasn't deciphered until 2017, and it was written in the late 1600s.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And it's funny to me that a nun would write about the God that she worships as being dead weight.
That is a weird terminology.
And then I also like the system works for no one. Like that's crazy to me. Like if there is a heaven and hell and the system is in place, but it works for no one, perhaps now Styx is certain. So according to this, the devil is trying to tell her that all souls go to hell. God can't free mankind from their ultimate fate of going to hell, which is fucking terrifying.
Yeah, that sucks to be starting off with you're going to hell, so you got to do good enough to not go to hell, but you're automatically going there.
Yeah, you don't have a choice. Hell is certain for you.
No,
and it's just different levels of shitty. Like oh, you really suck, so you're gonna have the shittiest hell of all. But you just kind of suck, so you just have to eat dog poop sandwiches for eternity.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, yeah, it would be terrible at first, but after eternity, I'm sure you'd get used to the taste of dog poop. You'd just be like, man, I would really like some ketchup, though.
Yeah, you just show up every day. Hey, Zazzlebub, where's my poop sandwich?
Yeah. Poop sandwiches in hell.
For some reason, with this story, I don't get the sense of schizophrenia. I kind of almost get maybe a little bit of that, maybe a little bit of mania, but it sounds, I just get the feeling of maybe she's very eccentric, accompanied with...
Well, they said that she would scream every night because she had to fight against demons and the devil. And like I said, a lot of patients with schizophrenia tend to have these like bestial or demonic imagery that goes along with some of the visions or hallucinations they have. So I would say it's possible. Maybe Sister Maria just had she had an extensive knowledge of languages and how to write these different languages, and just had a schizophrenic fit and kind of cycled through all these different languages to create this message that this being was telling her while she was having a schizophrenic fit.
Right.
And then they found her all like freaked out, like some crazy person doing research or so, just all wild-eyed with ink all over. And she's like, I finally done it. I finally done it. Yeah. And then they back then they're like, oh shit, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, I kind of just feel like
it's her just saying God is dead and everyone's going to hell.
Yeah, maybe she was having some just type of manic episode. I kind of just feel like if she knew about Southern snake handler Baptist churches, she'd be doing that. Maybe with a touch of mania, a little bit of bipolar stuff. Maybe she was just fucking tossing a few back in her room at night and bouncing off the walls.
Yeah. Maybe she was just tripping balls. She ate some fucking ergot. She got some ergot, just fucking went nuts. Doing lines of fungus. Tripping balls.
Snorting fucking mushrooms. Good Lord.
Yeah, she just fucking goes nuts. I mean, I could imagine being... I'm not saying that she really was tripping, but maybe she was. and I could imagine being a really... you're in a monastery from the time you're 15, or a convent, whatever, from the time you're 15, and you're now 31. That's more than half your years on this earth that you've been in this convent. So I'm sure you don't know very much about the outside world, and I could imagine not knowing anything about the outside world and tripping for your first time, and maybe having some hallucinations would freak you out.
Yeah.
But also schizophrenia.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe most 15-year-old girls who join a convent aren't there by choice.
Yeah.
So that could have been...
Yeah, it could just be like, where else are they going to go? But the thing is, the one thing against the schizophrenia idea is the fact that it doesn't seem like she really displayed any symptoms early on. Like, typically this comes in the early 20s, and she's now in her early 30s. So we're around 10 years beyond where people normally start to display symptoms of having this sort of disorder.
I also have trouble believing that somebody who's got schizophrenia enough to do something as to frantically write something down in a jumble of 4 or 5 forgotten languages and say it's written, through her from the devil I don't think somebody who's that schizophrenic could write down a letter that's a jumble of 3 different ancient languages. I mean, I think somebody who is schizophrenic...
You never know. Like, if they've got all the knowledge there and they're just kind of... it's not like it's erased from their brain. Maybe the reason they're writing it that way is because they're just tapping into all this shit randomly and oh, I need to use this idea, and then they write it there. Then I need to use this idea, and then they put it there, and that's why it's all scattered and not just written in one language.
I like that idea.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it really was just the devil, and the devil just wants to be a dick, and he's like, read it in this language. And she's like, no, I won't read it in this. Well, then read it in this language. No, you can't make me. Read it in this language. Oh, my God. He wanted to really hammer it home by writing in multiple languages that God was dead weight and she's going to hell.
I wonder if nobody was just trying to analyze the letter, because looking for the vowels is the first step in decoding a code.
Yeah, and I think what they were trying to do was isolate symbols or a script that we could actually match with something that's known. And then once they did that, they were able to isolate the vowels, and then from there they had to figure out the rest of the shit, and they were able to determine it was 5 different things.
That's crazy to me, man.
Yeah, it is. But it's hearing this, it reminded me of the Devil's Bible, which we covered a while ago, a few years ago actually, I think. But I love the name, the Codex Gigas.
Yeah.
Fucking awesome. But you guys might have seen it. It's it's the one that has the really super crazy cartoonish yet very detailed depiction of the devil. And by cartoonish, I don't mean like pitchfork and horns and hooves. Like this was from the Middle Ages, and it's, I don't know. If you haven't seen it, just Google Devil's Bible and you'll see it.
Yeah,
but
a touch primitive.
Just reminded me of that, where the devil bestowed knowledge on someone and made them write a book. But the legend of it, and we covered it. I think we did a full episode just on that, so I don't want to get really too into it. But for people that have never heard of the Devil's Bible, or are new to the show and haven't heard our things, I'll just run down the legend of the Bible really quick. So basically, this monk went against his order. I haven't been able to find any legend that really tells what he did to go against the order. But I would imagine that it's something to do with blasphemy or something along those lines, because they were going to punish him by walling him in. Ooh. Which is basically you put somebody in a chamber and you put bricks and mortar in front of it, so they are now behind a wall and they will die there. You just leave them to rot in this wall.
And sometimes they would leave a brick out so that people can look in and just kind of witness you.
Creepy fucks. But in order to avoid this fate, he offered the monks that used to be his brothers the opportunity to be pardoned if he can write this book that will compile all the knowledge of the time in one book. And he says he'll do this in one night. So, of course, thinking that that's impossible, they agree. And he created this book, which has all the books of the Bible, the most extensive medical books of the time, some apocrypha from the Bible, and then other popular books of the time, educational books that scholars and the like would be interested in. And they were all bound together on this. It was a book that was made of wood and bound in leather. And they used, I believe, 6 different colors to put the details in. And keep in mind, this is like the early Renaissance. It's like I think the late 1200s or early 1300s is when this book was alleged to have been done. And using the technology of the times and based on the detail of the artwork in the book. So there's a lot of, like, in fairy tale books, when you start the story, there's always the first letter is always crazy and huge and super detailed and flowy and beautiful. Yeah. He did this with every page. Experts that have viewed the book have said that in order to get all the detail with the color and everything that was in this book, it would have taken 20 years to do. And that's just the colored part.
Yeah, the coloring of this tile,
fancy letters and the pictures, and that would have taken 20 years, to say nothing of writing all of the words that's contained in this book. So I love that the legend is that he wrote it in one night and was able to avoid his fate. But it's just a legend. I don't think there's really any truth behind it, and I think it just kind of has this legend because it's got this weird picture of the devil in it. And what's the devil? What's this picture, huge devil picture, doing inside a Bible? It's weird, but I think that's kind of what gave it the fun legend and added the whole devil aspect to it. So the devil wrote this book, and the young monk was spared his fate of being walled in, but he told the devil he could have his soul. So, he's going to be eating fire ants for eternity.
Lose, buddy.
Yeah, sucks to be you. Should have just been walled up. At least you could have smashed your head against the wall and died if you wanted. But then again, you killed yourself, so you'd end up in hell anyway, eating fire ants for eternity.
Just don't make a deal with the devil. We did an episode about that too, so you should have listened to that.
Yeah. Devil dealers aren't ones to be dealt with.
Devil dealers always lose.
They do. I mean, in the 80s, instead of just say no to drugs, they should have been doing just say no to the devil. I mean, it was the era of the satanic panic after all.
Yeah.
Like, talk to your kids about the dangers of the devil.
Nancy Reagan didn't she? Like, trying to ban Dungeons and Dragons and metal.
Yeah. Yeah. No Metallica, no Dungeons and Dragons.
If your dice have more than 4 sides, you're worshiping Satan with every roll.
Yeah. Yeah. If your dice have anything other than the standard cuboid shape, then you are clearly casting spells and you will go straight to hell.
Have fun in hell, dice roller.
Yeah. Have fun in hell, nerds.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.